Good evening. This is the Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, June 14th, 2011. Welcome. I would like to say that we have been in closed session since 6:15 this evening for the purposes of employment of employee, closed session minutes, discussion and review, and the approval of the closed session minutes of May 24th, 2011. We are reassembled here. We have 6 board members present. Mr. Collins is unable to be with us this evening due to a business commitment, and I regret to say that Dr. Krizik is unable to be with us this evening due to a family medical emergency. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda this evening is a couple of recognitions. I would like to ask Coach Stan Rettel and Jim Hedman to come to the podium up here and bring your boys.
Good evening. Little did I know 7 years ago this would almost turn into be an annual event. With a great deal of pleasure, I'd like to introduce the team and the boys and some of my assistants. But I'd like to give you a little bit of a background what this really means for the school and the community, and especially what these young men have accomplished. Until 3 years ago, in order to get a trophy in the state meet, you had to be one of the top 3 teams out of 330. Okay. So that's a little harder than trying to win the Super Bowl. And then as of 3 years ago, they went to 3 classes, and now you have to be one of the top 3 teams out of the 174 largest schools in the state of Illinois. And we have been fortunate over the last 7 years to win 6 trophies. And the one year we didn't, we were 4th. Those kids almost feel like failures. Our philosophy is to be really good and not to be elitist. So our average team size has been, I counted it up the other day, was right at 197 athletes. The only way we can do that is we have a great coaching staff. I have 5 coaches that are hired through the district, and I have 6 coaches that help out by volunteering, which is a very big commitment. And the only way we could have 190 athletes like that, plus, is all those young guys helping to volunteer. To my left is my main distance assistant, Jim Hedman. Jim has been with me for 5 years now, and has a great record as a distance coach, as you'll hear in a second, and feel very badly on short notice. I almost didn't make it tonight either, that the rest of my coaching staff could be here. I'd like to introduce the boys, and I will just go right down the line. As you can read the program, they were second in the state meet. I won't say they surprised us, but maybe a little. I had it calculated if things would go right, we would maybe be 4th or 5th. And they exceeded that. And I'm very proud of the effort and the time and the commitment and the competitiveness. And probably even above that, they really present themselves in a fashion that make us proud that they represent the team, the school, and the community. All right. As you can see, they have their requisite suit on. That's the way we attend the state meet. We do dress up. We're the only team that does that. And we take a little pride in being different that way. Our first young man today will be stand up, Willie Sullivan. Come on up, and I'd like you to shake the hands of the members. Willie is one of is going to go down as one of the great athletes in New York history. He's all-state in 2 sports, both basketball and track. He's double all-state 2 years in a row in track by earning that status in 3 different relays this year, 2 different relays last year. Stay up here, Willie. Just, okay, stand. Yeah, that's good. And earned 5 state medals in 2 years, which is, I've got to look that up. That might be close to record. We don't have many kids that have earned that many. Next is Matt Simo, who won on our 3,200-meter relay that placed 4th in the state meet, and as of the state meet, they were ranked 10th in the United States with that time. It was a very competitive field. Next, young man, Adam Hibner, was with us. Adam got to know, was a fine athlete for us, but also with competition comes frustration. Right when Adam was going to help us out big time, he got injured, and he just got to experience the frustrations of adulthood a little earlier than other people. I always tell the kids, if everything goes too easy in high school, you won't be prepared for life, so take it with a grain of salt. Our next young man is, we're very proud of the progress kids make from their freshman to their senior year, and this man probably made as much as any. Tim Cooney was on the 3,200-meter relay, ran outstanding down at the state meet, probably made as much progress in the last year as any athlete we had. Next, we like our underclassmen the best because they will be back. And Andrew Ivaskevich will be back. He is one of the 2 sophomores that we took to the state meet. He was an alternate in the 4x4 relay that competed in the state meet. Next is Sean John, a sophomore. He competes for us in the pole vault. He was the conference champion in the pole vault as a sophomore and made it to the state meet as a qualifier and vaulted 14 feet. He's the highest sophomore pole vaulter in the history of York. Next, now this is the problem. When we have twins, I always get confused. Now I got to figure out which one is it. I knew it though. I was going to just guess. Tom Hadman and is one of our fine distance kids. Ran the 3,200, the 1,600, the 800, the 4x8, and came down state as one of our alternates. Next comes Paul Mason, one of our fine sprinters who competed for 4 long years with us in a variety of sprint events and was a backup in 2 of our sprint relays. Next comes Ron Hedman, who qualified in 2 events, but we pulled the rug out of one and said he was just going to run one of the 2. He ran the race of his life in the 4x8, 3,200-meter relay. Next, I said we only had 2 sophomores. Really, we had 3. Matt Parks, our 3rd sophomore, was our sophomore alternate in the 4x8 relay. And we're looking for big things in the next 2 years from Matt. We go to the back row. Eric Globke, a junior, one of the alternates for 4x8. These underclassmen will have some very big shoes to fill as we were a heavily senior-dominated team this year. For the first time since 1997, York scored a field event point, and that went to Nick Scarboza. He was all-state in the pole vault. Him and Sean were great teammates and great competitors with each other and did a great job. A lot of these kids have some very interesting stories, too. Nick has had some real back problems, and I thought his career was over before it got started. So to be a pole vaulter with a herniated disc is not an easy task. Next, last but not least, Jack Driggs, who I think is the 3rd York qualifier to win 2 individual distance races. He won the 2-mile and the mile, both in very dramatic fashion. He ran 9:06 for the 3,200-meter run, but there were 3 kids that ran 9:06. His just happened to be a little faster than the other 2. And then he came back in the 1,600, and 2 kids ran 4:13, and we're just glad that Jack ran just a little faster than the other kids, so it was a very exciting double win. Now that I think about it, Jack also, I know right off the top of my head, has been all-state 5 different times since his sophomore, junior, senior year, which is really, really an admirable goal. No, it's really been a joy to coach these kids. I guess I'm biased, but I always think I get the best kids in the school and the best kids around. They are really a quality act, and I get to see them day in and day out, and every one of their parents and every one of you can be extremely proud of them. Thank you, guys. I guess I just like to cross my fingers and say, see you again next year.
Just 1 second, John. I have a proclamation for you.
Okay.
I'm going to be reading board proclamation for both the boys track team and our women's track winner. But first, I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your summer evenings to come here so that we could recognize you this evening. We are very, very proud of you and your accomplishments. We're proud of the example that you set for your teammates, for your classmates, for your brothers and sisters. And we really want you to know how much we appreciate all of your hard work. To the seniors, we wish you well in whatever you choose to do next year and beyond. And for the underclassmen, we want to see you up here again next year. So this is a proclamation that I'm going to give to the coach. It says, whereas members of the York Community High School's boys track and field team finished second in state for the second consecutive year in the Illinois High School Association Class 3A boys track and field finals, and whereas senior Jack Driggs won 2 state titles, one in the 3,200 meter run and one in the 1,600 meter event, earning the honor of being only the 5th athlete in the history of York's track program to win 2 individual state titles. And whereas junior David Byerly and seniors Christoph Romanchik, Maurice Watkins, William Sullivan finished second in the state in the 4x200 meter relay. And whereas the effort, dedication, and attitude developed through the sport of track and field has a lifelong effect on the members of the team and on other student athletes. And whereas the accomplishments of this team bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to the community of Elmhurst, now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express deep appreciation and congratulations to head coach Stan Rettel, assistant coaches Jim Hedman, Chris Corfist, Joe Gianecki, Mike Murphy, John Mariner, and to the members of the boys track and field team, Kevin Adamick, Kenneth Bosenberg, David Byerly, Timothy Cooney, Jack Driggs, Eric Globke, Nicholas Gornick, Ronald Hedman, Thomas Hedman, Adam Hibner, Andrew Ivaskovich, Sean John, Ryan Kent, Paul Mason, Daniel Maxon, Matthew Parks, Anthony Pezza, Christoph Romanchik, Nicholas Garbosa, Matthew Simo, William Sullivan, Maurice Watkins, Matthew Winans, Wesley Zitek, along with team manager Jeremy Sundberg for their outstanding performance during the spring 2001 season. Another round of applause, please. Next, we would like Coach Amy Peters-Badeau to come up and talk about our girls' successes.
Hi, I'd first like to say congratulations to the boys team. You guys had a tremendous season. I want to start by saying that. I am here to speak on behalf of Michelle Frigo. I do not have the pleasure of coaching her personally. I'm just the pole vault coach. But what I will say is that I am definitely a spectator and one of her biggest fans outside of probably her family, and that goes for the whole distance program. Annette Schulte year after year runs a tremendous, tremendous program, and we're just so proud of the girls. So I can stand up here and I could read you results and I can read you times and tell you all the things that she's done on paper, but you can look online, you can read the paper, and you can see those things. What I prefer to stand up here and tell you about, one of the things that I get most excited about when we go to meets is you see a girl like Michelle Frigo line up on the line, and the girl has fire in her eyes, and there is nobody like that. We've got a team of about half as many as the boys have. We have about 100, so that's not bad, but of a team of 100 girls, Michelle Frigo, there is nobody like her standing on the line ready for the gun to go off. And for that, that's what I'm always going to remember year after year, and that's what I'm most excited about next year, to see what she's going to accomplish. Additionally to that, I had the pleasure of watching her run downstate, and we had right on the finish line, we had about 25 friends and family, other girls on the team. The girls come out of the tent and they come running out, and everybody's on their feet just screaming for Michelle. And it was just, when they came out and from the time she stood on that line, it was a very exciting race. The first lap she comes around, she's in 8th place. And nobody's nervous, no, because that's how Michelle runs. So we're standing up, we're screaming. She goes around the first curve. She's on the back stretch. She's still in 8th place. She comes around the final curve. She's fighting for 7th place. She's got about 50 meters, and we are just dying in the stands right on the finish line. 50 meters to go, she's in 6th place and 5th place. And she comes running right past us, finishes in 3rd place. And it was an exciting race down to the last second. So I want to say congratulations to Michelle. I'm one of your biggest fans. I cannot wait for next year, see what you do your senior year. So that's all I want to say. Come on up.
Stay right here. For you, I have this. There you go. And your proclamation reads, whereas Junior Michelle Frigo, member of the York Community High School girls track and field team, finished 3rd in the 800-meter run in the Class 3A girls track and field state meet for the 2nd year in a row. And whereas Michelle became the 4th athlete in York history to earn all-state honors twice in the 800-meter event, along with her teammates, finished 4th in the 4x800-meter relay. And whereas the effort, dedication, and attitude developed through the sport of track and field has a lifelong effect on the members of the team and on other student athletes. And whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to the community of Elmhurst. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express deep appreciation and congratulations to head coach Annette Schulte, assistant coaches Tim Welsh, Karen Kuchar, Clyde Ware, Amy Peters-Badeau, and Katie Zavadny, and to all-state athlete Michelle Frigo for her outstanding performance. Before we move on, we have a couple of other special recognitions to bestow. This is the last board meeting for 3 of our administrators. Pat Masterton, recognized at our last meeting for your special awards. I still just want you to know that we really appreciate all of your hard work on our behalf, keeping us in such sound financial condition all these years. I really, really appreciate what you've done for District 205. It's been one of my goals always to keep a balanced budget and we can't do anything if we don't have a sound financial base on which to build, and you have kept that for us. And I just want you to know how much we as a board and a community appreciate that. After you retire, I know you're not leaving the district for a few months, but this is your last board meeting as Assistant Sup for Finance. I just hope that after you finally retire that you get to work on the economy and the CPI for us, please. That would be a little legacy for you to leave, yes. And tonight we bid farewell to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Karen Sullivan. Dr. Sullivan was recruited by Dr. Krizik just 2 years ago, but what a 2 years those have been. Before Dr. Sullivan came here, we had a plan in place for raising student achievement, but she actually jump-started that plan and set it in motion for us. The payoff of the processes that Dr. Sullivan has put in place has become apparent by the increases we have already seen in student achievement. Here are some of the areas that she's improved in just 2 years. Response to intervention practices, curriculum alignment to Common Core standards, development of literacy and math power standards and proficiency scales, English language learners program that is fully compliant, meaningful professional development opportunities for teachers throughout the district, and changes in curriculum adoption and course sequencing, and I could go on and on. I don't understand all of the educationese, but I'm sure you do. Just as we have made great strides in educational technology in our district, Dr. Sullivan has shown us the importance of data in the assessment of our students' progress and in their own self-assessment as well. She's been a huge proponent of our teachers having the time to collaborate, to talk to each other about individual students, what works in the classroom and what doesn't. Dr. Sullivan has done exactly what we hoped she would do when she came on board. She has effected significant, measurable, and lasting change. We hate to see you go. We have so appreciated your gentle ways of prodding us to look at things in a different way, to do the challenging, to take the hard steps that only we will see paying off in the years to come. We appreciate your dedication and your extraordinary efforts while you were here, and we wish you well in the next chapter of your career. And tonight is the last meeting for Superintendent Lynn Krizik as well. And I'm sorry she cannot be here, but I'm going to deliver these remarks anyway. And I want to start by saying I personally appreciate that she was always available. There's nothing more time-consuming or, I would imagine, more annoying than 7 board members with the superintendent's cell phone number. I know that I interrupted many an evening or weekend with my pesky questions, and I want to thank her for that. She always answered. At an earlier meeting this year, former board president Peggy Ostojic listed many of Lynn's accomplishments during her 5-year tenure with us. She spoke to Dr. Krizik's skill in the areas of increasing student outcomes through alignment to Common Core standards, assessment systems, and professional development of our staff. Mrs. Ostojic commented on Dr. Krizik's skillful fiscal management. She and her team took the district from early warning status to financial recognition and improvements in technology for the classroom and for district operations. It's not necessary for me to embellish, explain, or add to this list of accomplishments. Dr. Krizik's accomplishments stand for themselves and can be seen and felt in every area of our organization. What I want to express appreciation for tonight is that Dr. Krizik took on the hard work. She didn't just go for the low-hanging fruit. She could have spent her time here on the easy fixes, the ones that just took a little time or a little money thrown at them. Instead, Dr. Krizik worked to implement systematic organizational change so that we might reap the benefits long after she is gone. I happened to be board president when Dr. Krizik was appointed superintendent of District 205. The board had given her a list of tasks to accomplish, and I remember summing up that really we just expected her to walk on water. As I look over the last 5 years, I have to admit that she got pretty far in our district-issued rowboat. The fact that the rowboat was often leaky and had only one oar had never really stopped her. Dr. Krizik spent 5 years of her career in District 205, never shying from the difficult decisions, never turning her back on something that might be politically or organizationally hard. I'm sure she knew what the consequences of her actions might be, but she did what she felt to be best for our district, in spite of that knowledge. That is the mark of integrity and true dedication to public service. For 5 years, we have benefited from that integrity, and generations of our children will benefit from it as well. On behalf of the board and on behalf of those generations of children, we thank you. We wish Dr. Krizik well wherever life takes her next. I have a plaque that I will give her later that I'd like to read to you. It says, presented to Dr. Lynn Krizik, Superintendent 2006 to 2011, in recognition and gratitude for 5 years of dedicated service to the children, staff, and community of the Elmhurst School District, Elmhurst, Illinois, by the Board of Education, Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205, June 14th, 2011. I'd like a round of applause, please. Take the rest of these back. Next item, oh, yes. Go enjoy your summer. Absolutely. We'll take a few minutes break. Yeah. Only three people. Only three people have signed up to speak to us. It's Marie Strauch. How do you say her name? The next item on our agenda is public comments. 3 people have indicated the interest in expressing the board this evening. I would remind you that when you come to the podium to please make sure the mic is on, state your name and address for the record, and please know that it is not the practice of the board to respond to public comments at this meeting, but please know also that each board member and the administration is listening carefully to what you have to say. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The first speaker is Carol Berghager. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carol Berghager, and I have three students in this district, the youngest of whom is entering 7th grade at Churchville, and he happens to be in the REACH English program. I'm sure you may have noticed that I sent you an extremely long email to all the board members this week. I apologize for that, but this is an issue that's very important to a lot of parents at Churchville. It's something we feel strongly about. As you know, it's our principal's plan to take apart what we view as a really wonderful REACH English program at Churchville. Many parents have sent emails to our principal, talked to the principal, attended a meeting with the principal, and I've been very involved in this issue, but rather than bombard you with every single person, we thought we'd just pick a couple people to come up and speak. But I would like to ask all those in the audience who are here for that issue if you would please stand up. Thank you. And there are many others who want to come, but as you know, this is a crazy time of year. So while there are a lot of challenging issues that are facing Churchville that are unique to that school, I'm actually here to talk about a program that is working fabulously well at Churchville, and it is the REACH English program. By happenstance, a number of years ago, one teacher ended up teaching both the 6th and 7th grade REACH English classes. While that's a bit unusual to have one teacher teaching in 2 years, it's turned out to be incredibly successful, all because of the amazing talent of one particular teacher, whose name is Ms. Molly Nekvatal. She's the kind of teacher who has a great talent for working with kids who are advanced readers, but not necessarily very interested in writing or analyzing in a very deep way, and I can vouch for you, my 3 children did fall into that category. She transforms these reluctant readers into pretty good writers and people with really good critical thinking skills. And actually turns them into people who like English, which is, again, and certainly I can say for my kids, a pretty amazing thing. Many of her students have said that this 2-year class was the most intense, challenging, and rewarding class of their entire educational experience so far, including their years at York High School. So what we think the district should be doing is figuring out what Ms. Nekbatal is doing right and then bottle it and sell it. Okay, we should be building on these successes and transferring it to other subjects and other schools and figuring out how to multiply it, okay? But instead, it turns out that our principal has decided to break apart this 2-year sequence and to give the 7th grade Reach English class to a teacher who's new to the building and has not previously taught at the middle school. The reasons given for the change are minor administrative conveniences in our view, and I'm not going to go into those. I'm sure you've seen them in my email. But the benefits that potentially flow from those administrative conveniences to us are tiny in comparison to the huge benefit that we think comes from the 2-year looping program with Ms. Nekbatal. Taking apart a highly successful 2-year class for these reasons is completely contrary to what we think should be the primary goal of this district, which is student achievement. And if that was telling me that I should be quiet, let me just close with this. We recognize that the board doesn't usually get involved in this kind of a decision of what class any particular teacher teaches at a school. We get that. But we think that this is an exceptional circumstance and that it requires an exceptional response from the board. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Marie Strouch.
Hi, I'm Marie Strauk, and I have 2 students in District 205. One was in 6th grade. He's going to be in 7th grade next year. And the other one is going to be a freshman at York. My daughter, Amy, is the one that's going to be a freshman next year at York. And she went through the REACH program with Miss Molly Nekbatal. And she had 2 years in 6th and 7th grade with her. And it was just a really highly successful program. And then Brian has just had 1 year with Molly. And he came home one day and said, Mom, she's not going to be teaching the next year. And he was really sad because he really, really likes the class. And not only does she teach really well, but she just motivates these kids really, really well. Her classes are motivating. They just enrich the kids incredibly well. For her to motivate a boy and to learn about Shakespeare and Julius Caesar it just amazes me. You know, she's unlike any other teacher at Churchville, and I think to have this little gem at Churchville is something really special. I spoke with Miss Brown about her reasoning behind wanting to discontinue this class, this looping class. And she said that it was because of articulation with this new teacher. And I thought it just didn't add up with her reasoning. And she said that she wanted to have this new teacher come in and not have to teach a 6th and an 8th grade class. And she wanted the new teacher to only have to do a 7th and 8th grade class. And she was going to have Miss Nekbatal teach the regular 6th grade and the REACH 6th grade, instead of continuing this nice class that she's been doing with a 6th grade and a 7th grade, the REACH class. And I think, why change this great program that we've already had and discontinue this program that's so successful, just because of the convenience of planning or articulation for the convenience of teaching, or the teacher's plan, and then have these students not have this maximum achievement. So I thought, when you're a teacher, you want to have maximum achievement, and that's our goal, is to be here for the students, not for the teachers, having the ease of teacher plan. So I thought, if that's the principal's goal, it's not in the right direction. So I usually don't stick my nose into any problems with the schools, and this was my first time that I thought, this thing just doesn't add up, and I thought I would come to you. Okay, so thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker is Elizabeth Dirkscheide.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Dirkscheide. I'm at 301 North Addison. I have 4 children in 205 schools, 1 at the elementary now, 2 at the middle school, and 1 at the high school. And I'm also here to speak to the REACH program, which is unique. I often find myself here speaking on behalf of middle level learners and kids in the middle and kids at the bottom. And I'm here tonight to advocate for my children who are in this REACH program. And it is unique. And I've heard about this program from neighbors on my street when I first moved to Elmhurst and was told about this outstanding looping and how well it works for adolescent learners. And it has been for 2 of my children, both my entering 8th grade and entering 11th grader, the most rigorous, rewarding, and successful academic experience that they have had at Churchville. As you've heard, an administrative decision was made to dismantle the program. Presently, the students do loop from 6th to 7th grade with the same teacher, and a second teacher provides the 8th grade REACH English instruction. So next year, the looping is going to be discontinued for these REACH students. And to be clear, this is not a teacher reassignment. This is not that simple. This is not teacher A replacing teacher B. This is 2 years in a row with the same teacher and a third teacher at the end, and now it'll be 3 different teachers. So we did approach our principal, and it had been clear, for the reasons that have been articulated, but that this is about how to organize adults. And the model will ring familiar. We call them professional learning communities. And as someone whose life work touches on school research and reform, I can tell you this isn't what a PLC looks like. PLCs work when teachers are in the lead, looking together at student data, sharing effective teaching strategies, making changes accordingly, and holding each other accountable for student data, student growth, and effective teaching. This is a top-down administrative decision that was made without input, dismantling something that teachers have built. And it's a program that works for students and works for families. Through the last month, parents have attempted to bring this perspective and additional information to light. About 20 sets or more of parents have now reached out, called, met, sent emails regarding the effectiveness of this program. Their stories are compelling and, in fact, backed by research regarding the effectiveness of looping with emerging middle grade students. We ask you to look at this. There is no data to say that the program as it is doesn't work. Certainly no data to suggest that this dismantling will be effective. So why is it being changed? To serve adults or to serve the children? Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments portion of our meeting this evening. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent's communication. The first item is the transportation survey results. Who's going to grab this one? Ms. Masterton.
Thank you, Mrs. Storoni. Well, as you know, we've had a lot of discussion and information out in the public about our proposed transportation fees for extracurricular activities, including middle school band and high school and middle school athletics. Through the board directive, we did a transportation survey, and we would like to share with you the results of the transportation survey and our recommendations for the change to the already adopted, at this point, transportation fee. The survey process, we first surveyed surrounding districts on their transportation services, and then we surveyed parents of students in kindergarten through 11th grade because we felt that they were both current and future users. We received an overwhelming response of 1,055, which is a very large response. We were really pleased by that. Just to give you some information about the transportation services in surrounding districts, those districts are offering before and after school transportation for band, orchestra, and choir at the middle school. There were 3 districts that said yes and 7 no out of the 10 districts that were actually had before and after school band and orchestra. The one school that may have a fee for it charges $200 per year. After school activities, clubs, and athletics, transportation at the middle school, 6 yes, 2 of 6 provide only 1 bus, and 2 no buses. After school activities, clubs, athletics, transportation at the high school, 3 districts said yes, 1 of the 3 provides only 1 bus, 2 said no, they don't provide buses. The one that does provide a bus at a fee, it's $100 per year. And as you can see, those are the districts that we surveyed at the bottom. For our own survey, we had survey respondents represented by the grade level, and I'll just give you a chance to take a look at that because it's considerable. And obviously, our largest group, and I'm trying to bring mine up here because my eyes are not so wonderful. Our largest group at 19.8 was grade 6, and 20.6 was grade 7. So our middle school population were the largest responders. Our reported middle school program participation, as you can see, middle school band and orchestra, the largest percentage were of the people that responded did have students in middle school band and orchestra, and then also athletics, and school clubs were a smaller percentage on there. So as you can see, in the athletic season participation, the largest was the spring session. In our high school program participation, in high school athletics, there were in 9th grade 121, in 10th grade 127, and then it goes down into 11th grade at 92 that participated, and there were some that did not participate. And obviously we also had, just to let you know, we had parents responding for both middle school and high school students, so there's a little crossover in some of the data. It doesn't always add up to 1,055. In the high school clubs, we had really kind of across the board in all 3 grades. There was almost an equal amount of participation. One area in 10th grade, we had 50 who said no, they don't participate in clubs, which was about twice as much as 9th and 11th grade. Those that currently participate in other middle school, high school, after school activities, 49.2 said yes, they do, and 50.8 said no, they didn't. For those that do, you can take a look and see that the largest percentage is for schoolwork help. After school tutoring or help with things. Next would be plays and clubs and intramurals. Theater is really probably the same as plays. Math help, studying, and on from there. Now we get into the actual questions about the importance of and the results of what we felt were the factors that we wanted in terms of our fee and what we proposed. So we asked, number one, to rate by importance the following. The length of the after-school activity an athletic bus ride was only somewhat important to really closer to somewhat important. Having bus service available for after-school activities and athletics at 4 o'clock, I'm sorry you can't see that whole thing in there, but it's actually at the 4 o'clock, was important, closer to important. Having bus service available for after-school athletic activities at 6:15 was really actually important, the most important. Having bus routes available at both 4:30 and 6:15 was somewhat important to important, and having late bus routes available at 6:15 at the high school came in a portion of it was just somewhat important. So, and I'm going to take that back, the largest was having bus service available for after-school athletic activities and athletics at the high school period. Respondents' view on free or paid transportation, 63.5% said that they would like it to be free, and it's interestingly enough in the middle school for band, orchestra, and choir, and 36.5 felt it would be okay to charge a fee. Middle school students involved in after-school activities, it's kind of a corresponding percentage in all three. 63.5, 61.5, and 64% for the high school all felt that they would prefer the free transportation. I kind of felt that was sort of a no-brainer in some ways. I know I'd put that if I was asked that question, but I respect the fact that there were really a third of people that said, yeah, they would be willing to pay a fee. On the respondents' view on the elimination or non-elimination of PM activity bus transportation, there were 28.5% who said, yeah, it would be okay, but overwhelmingly 71.5% said, no, it would not be okay, that they would prefer to continue having the PM activity bus transportation. So then let's talk about our options. And what we did was provided questions about the options that we had on fees. So option was implement an athletic activity band orchestra choir bus fee of the current $330 per student per year, break it out $102 per semester or $110 per season or $165 per semester, and charge a single-use ticket of $2. That would be an offset of $57,000. That would include no changes to the routes. 52.7% said it was not very acceptable, and 20.1% said it was somewhat acceptable. So obviously not a really happy option. Option 2 was to reduce 2 middle school bus routes in the afternoon, one at Churchville, one at Sandburg, in addition to reducing one 4:30 p.m. route and one 6:15 p.m. route, and combining those routes together into the other buses at York High School. Also, a $75 per student per year transportation fee would be implemented, which would be $25 per season or $37.50 per semester. A single-use ticket would cost $1. And in this case, it was either somewhat acceptable or acceptable, with over 58 to 60% saying it would be either somewhat acceptable or acceptable. Option 3 was reduce the afternoon buses as described in option 2, however, implement a $90 per student charge, $30 per season, or $45 per semester. The single-use tickets, it would again cost $1, and in that case, it was still somewhat acceptable, but a little less acceptable at 27.5% and 28.5%. And in option 4, we would reduce the bus routes and also continue to have a $330 charge, and that wasn't acceptable at all. Frankly, that was really not acceptable. So we also asked respondents the impact of a $330 activity bus transportation, and what was marked in there is that they would either drive more or they would try to carpool, but 14.8 said that their students would no longer be able to participate, and that was of great concern to us. In the $90 activity bus fee, that dropped down to 8.1%, and really there was a much larger group that said that they would be willing to pay the fee. And here in the $75, you can see that that is the largest percentage of people who were willing to pay the fee. Many people said, yes, we'll still, try to drive more or we'll carpool. But what was really important here is that the no longer be able to participate was down to 6.9%, which is considerably less. So our recommendation would be to implement option 2, which is the $75 a year, $37.50 a semester, $25 a season, $1 single-use ticket, and reduce the 2 middle school bus routes in the afternoon, one at Churchville, one at Sandburg, in addition to reducing one 4:30 p.m. route and one 6:15 p.m. route at York High School. The offset of the district expenses is estimated at $70,512. And I will be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Masterton? Mr. Bloom?
So my understanding is when we walked into this, there was a reimbursement issue with the state for $50,000, and then there was $50,000 that the fee was going to cost us. So we recover 70 of the 100. Where does the other 30 come from?
We would just do, in general, reductions to the budget as best that we could in terms of making every effort to find less expensive ways of doing things in terms of re-looking at routes, making every attempt to, amalgamate routes together as much as possible. And certainly we'll be able to save some money in supplies and other areas. So I'll lower my contingency line item by $30,000, and that'll make life a little bit better. So,
Mrs. Hirsch?
Thank you for putting together the survey. I'm thrilled with the response rate that we had. I'm also very happy to see the response rate that we had across all grade levels. This is obviously something that caught the attention of not just one particular set of students, a particular age group. The question I had, Ms. Masterton, is we're set up to be able to handle the one-off tickets at the high school? And is it my understanding that we can also handle one-off tickets at the middle schools as well? So we will have some kind of system in place that if a student unexpectedly needs to stay, they'll be able to leverage the transportation we have in place.
Our plan is at the high school, the bookstore would be where they would go to purchase those, although I would think that towards the end of the day, they could probably go to the main office and also be able to purchase a ticket. At the middle schools, it would be the main office where they would be able to go and purchase a ticket. And it works out very well. Those people who purchase a longer amount will have either a sticker or a punch of some sort on their ID that the bus driver can see to identify that. And the one-off tickets, they'll just dump it in a basket, the students, as they walk in, and nothing will be slowed down in terms of anyone having to check anyone in or do anything like that.
Thank you. I want to thank you for working with our bus company for trying to put a new process in place. I think while we realized when we put this fee in place months ago that this was going to be a difficult fee to accept and to impose, I think we had a number of vocal community members who were affected by this and came forward and asked us to look at it again. I think that was great feedback for us to receive. I think it was great feedback for the administration to receive. And I think we've worked very hard to be responsive and to come up with a more acceptable, reasonable approach, something that is a little bit easier to swallow than a $330 fee. And I still would like to see us track participation rates at the middle schools, the instrumental music program, the athletics, the activities, and those kind of things. But I think overall this is a positive response to a situation that was a difficult situation for us to have to put forth. So thank you very much for the work.
Any other questions, Mrs. Stufen?
The only other question that I wanted to ask Ms. Masterton is, as you look at the projections for next year, since the state has talked about giving us transportation dollars, not what we'd like, but at least a little bit more, how is this impacted for us, anticipated next year?
I'm trying to think of the political way of because people tell me I don't filter so well anymore. Now that I'm getting close to retirement, so I'm trying to put this in the right way. The state often says that they will give us things that we often don't receive. And so I tend to try to be a little bit more realistic about, what is actually going to be coming our way. And at this point, despite the fact that we weren't expecting very much transportation money, we've received almost none of it. And so while I think that the governor has, our best interests in mind in terms of transportation, it's all fine and good to say we're going to appropriate this. That doesn't mean we're actually going to receive that. And until I actually see that money coming to us, And if the money comes to us, then I would certainly say that if we can be self-supporting in the transportation fund, then this is a fee that should go away. It's not something that, we hope that we're going to have for the long haul, but we do have to be able to be somewhat self-supporting in that fund. And so I hope I'm wrong, but, experience has told me that there's less money and more talk in downstate these days, so.
Okay, well, thank you for giving that response. And but thanks for engaging the parents and looking at feasible options and solutions for us, and also for decreasing the total activity fees from $330. So I'll reiterate what Ms. Hirsch has said. I will be looking forward to seeing future participation numbers as well as ridership numbers so that we can look at the effectiveness and determine impact for the district and for our families, and have more data to come up with future solutions. Thank you.
Mr. McDonough.
Thanks again for the work and reaching out. I think this is a much better solution than the original one. My concern mostly is regarding the one-offs, and I'm looking at slide number 8 in particular. A number of these things are irregular after-school activities that have to do with our core mission, which is education. Schoolwork help, math, study, computer, library. These are the sort of things where I know $1 doesn't sound like much of a disincentive, but it can be. It's the practical aspect. A kid doesn't know where to get a ticket, or somebody's away from the desk at the office. For whatever reason, they get stuck once. I'm just wondering if there's some way that we could find a way to not have this be a disincentive in some form for these extra academic aspects, or these beneficial after-school activities where a kid needs to be enticed. So that's different. Let's stay on the first one, which is academic issues. Is there some way to deal with that? Also, disciplinary detentions. Are we going to keep a kid after and say, and you got to fork over $1 too?
Well, it would be a way of teaching them that, first of all, I would say that in any issue in terms of if a kid was not able to acquire a ticket and came to the bus and said they're not there in the office, no bus driver would turn them away. That's just not the way that they handle things at First Student. If he was a chronic offender, then they might say, give me your name. I think we need to talk to your principal a little bit about the fact that you're riding this bus all this time and you're not, paying for it. But they still wouldn't turn him away. So that's the first thing. We haven't really talked about the effect of whether or not that's going to bother kids. Honestly, it's less expensive than PACE. It's less expensive than a cab ride. It's really probably more of a savings than parents coming to pick kids up in terms of, the cost of gas these days. So I think we'd have to take a look at it for sure. I know our schools well enough to know that if there's a kid who needs the help, they're going to call, no longer me, but they'll call someone at the district office and say, we got a kid who we really need to have stay after school. We really need to give him some help, and he doesn't have the money to buy a ticket. And I know well enough that that we would say, fine, don't worry about it. Just give him the ticket and don't worry about it. We leave that up to the discretion of the schools. There's no real way to track it, so we would always leave it up to the discretion of the schools.
I'm glad to hear it. Again, it's not about the cost. It's about the disincentive, the trouble. We want to have as few obstacles to these things happening as possible. Thank you.
Any other questions? If it's Mrs. Hirsch.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify. In your view, this is not a fee that would be waived. for students who qualify for the free and reduced lunch, or this would be a fee that would be considered waived? It would not be a fee that would be considered to be waived for students who are on free and reduced lunch. So the one-off kind of a thing, if a kid is having trouble, that's something that we feel falls within the realm of discretion. But this would not be a fee that a family would be eligible to have waived.
No, but we did discuss, and I noticed that. And first of all, I have to give credit to Ms. Smith and Dr. Krizik for doing the bulk of the work here in doing this survey. One of the things that Dr. Krizik recommended, I may have balked a little on it, but just the amount. But she was right. Is that we do a maximum of $225 per family per year, for no matter how many kids there are. That's 3. That's what we do normally with athletics. That's what we do with a number of different things. So that's what we would be recommending in terms of regular transportation. Certainly we think that for most families it's not going to be that much, but if you've got 3 highly active kids who stay before or after school and want that kind of thing, that would be the option for them. So no, it's not covered under the waiver. The waiver is only for free and who apply for it, and in general applies only to textbooks and non-optional items. I do, however, know that many of the schools are already kind of making some plans to help out with that, talking to the foundation, looking at some other issues in terms of how to help people with the fees and with other areas. So I think that will be a growing concern, and a good one, and a good way to put our money to good use.
My last thing is just about communication about the change in plans. I know that we had some visibility in terms of our initial plan of the $330 fee, and there was obviously feedback, and it's just important that we do several things. One is we publicly promote what our new fee structure is going to be. The maximum I was not aware of, so that I think would be very helpful to have that included as well. And 2, a little guidance to parents. Since we already have registration going, we already have, I think, a different fee structure that has been part of the registration process in terms of collecting fees for school registration. So I think we might need to do a little extra work to ensure that families are made aware of this shift during the summer.
Mr. Boom, did you have another comment?
Yeah, just one question is, as you involve the boosters in the foundation, is there any thought to like selling a block of tickets for 100 tickets for $75 to the foundation if they want to buy it, and give each principal 100 or a block of 100 tickets to hand out as they need? I mean, we don't want to short circuit the principle that we're using here, but to John's point, maybe some where we put discretion in the hands of some folks where we do that and we incentivize organizations like the foundation to buy a block of those, maybe at a little bit better rate.
That's a great idea. I love that idea. Yes, we could certainly do that. It's a really innovative and good idea. PTAs, hopefully they're hearing that kind of thing, and the foundation, yeah, it's a good idea. And Mrs. Hirsch, right now we have 15 people who've paid the $330 fee. We will be contacting each and every one of them and providing them with a refund of this after the board approves it, assuming that the board approves it. And we will get that information out to everybody and change it on our website as well.
If the board does not object, we can move up the superintendent's agenda item to approve this motion now. Is there a motion? It's item 10. I assume you're moving that the Board of Education approve a $75 per year, $25 per athletic season, $37.50 per semester, $1 per single-use transportation fee for before school, middle school, music band, orchestra, and after-school, middle school, high school activity buses, and make the identified after-school route reductions to the 2011-2012 school year.
Yes.
It's been moved by Mr. McDonough, second by Ms. Hirsch. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. That motion carries. The next item on our agenda is back to the superintendent's communication of the fiscal 12 revenue. Ms. Masterton.
Well, that's a great segue. We're talking about fees, and now we're going on to talking about revenue. First of all, I want to qualify the information that I'm going to give you and talk a little bit about the detail I'm going to give you about just understanding how revenue works in school districts. If it's too simplistic, I apologize, but I don't know your as a new board your level of understanding of funds and what we do with that. So. Just give me a high sign like, yeah, move it forward if you already know all of this. Secondly, I'm going to give a qualifier in terms of the work that we've done so far is through June 3rd. This is the time of year that, as Ms. Stufen had talked about, that we hear a lot of rhetoric of we're going to get this, we're going to get that, we might see this, we might see that. Yesterday I heard that the corporate personal property replacement tax may drop by as much as 32%. Last week I heard it may go up by 5%. So it's kind of hard to coalesce all of this. So we do try to stick to what we know as of a certain point. And as Mr. Collins said, I always base revenue on a low figure and expenditures on a high figure. And I turned this off, so now I have to turn it back on again. Okay, so there's 3 general sources of revenue for school districts, and those are local, state, and federal. Local revenue includes property taxes, user fees, investments and interest, other local fees, and corporate personal property replacement tax, even though corporate personal property replacement tax does come from the state, but it is considered local revenue. And to just summarize the process for receiving property taxes, it starts first with the county assessment process, or really in our case the township assessment process, the county review and equalization process. Here at the district, we do have a levy process that we go through, which includes truth in taxation if we're levying more than 5%. However, in our district, we do publish a truth in taxation notice even if we're less than 5% on our levy, just because it's a movement towards even more transparency than we're required. The Property Tax Exemption Limitation Act limits the amount of income that we receive from property taxes. And then we, after we know what the CPI is and what that's going to be, we do receive a tax extension numbers, which is actually the money we are to receive. The levy is what we request. The extension is what we get. And we always inflate what we ask for to make sure that we can get what we are supposed to get. And we always get less than what we ask for. It's kind of like being parents, I guess. You ask for more, you get less, and and that's kind of the way it is for kids. And then finally, the collection and distribution. The assessment process starts at the township level, where the assessors identify real property, they appraise and place a value on it. And for us, it's really important that we get to know our assessors and we visit with them and know what's going to be going on with that. Illinois statute states the assessed value is based on 33 1/3% of market value, except for farmland. And farmland is assessed using a yield-based formula, which means that farmland is taxed very low, and we have very little farmland in our area here. In fact, I think we have an EAV of like $542 in farmland. So. A few counties have special classification systems, but what's really important here is, number one, you manage your new growth and you manage TIFs, and that's a big part of what we do here in Elmhurst, because we have several. The levy process then starts with the school district passing the budget in August or September, and then shortly after that we begin to determine the levy amount in October. How much are we asking for? And we are obviously under the tax cap. We publish in a newspaper and we hold a public hearing, and then the board hopefully adopts the levy. We have to file a certificate of tax levy with the county clerk prior to the last Tuesday in December. And so you do have to watch out for Christmas, believe it or not, you really do. And the county clerk actually handles our bond amounts. Our bonded debt is handled through a levy through the county clerk, so we don't actually levy for our bonded debt. However, we double check to make sure they're doing it correctly when we get it. The PTEL, or Property Tax Extension Limitation, it was enacted in the Collier counties in 1991, in Cook County in 1995, and by referendum in some downstate counties. There aren't too many that are not covered by PTEL at this point. The PTEL limits the increases in property tax extension to 5%, or the increase in the Consumer Price Index, all urban consumers, CPIU, whichever is less. So I think the closest that we ever came to the 5% is a 4.9 2 years ago, and then we plummeted to a 0.1%. So it was quite a roller coaster. It allows for the issuances of limited tax bonds, which we're fully bonded out on in District 205. And limited tax bonds basically are saying that whatever your debt was in 1994 for non-referendum bonds, you can continue to issue when you relieve that debt, when you've paid off that debt. So if I paid off $1 million of that non-referendum debt, I could then issue bonds for another $1 million. Probably be not real cost effective, but you can do that. And some districts do that. And in fact, some districts rely on their limited tax bond capability to keep them afloat. And we do not on there. Property tax extension then comes into play at the collection and distribution level. We get 2 mailings of tax bills, and I'm sure you all know that. The taxes are due 1 month after the billing date. The first half comes June, and normally right around June 1st, and the second half comes in September. In the rest of our local fees come from student and user fees, and they include textbooks, technology fee, I should add transportation fee, athletic and extracurricular fees, facility usage, driver's ed, parking permits, graduation, lunch fees are a large amount of money. And then other local revenue includes foundation grants, local grants, and corporate sponsorships. And finally, corporate personal property replacement tax, which is a state tax on the net income of corporations to replace a local tax on the assessed value of corporate personal property that was in 1979. It's a nice amount of money. We don't look a gift horse in the mouth, and let's put it that way. It's distributed in January, March, April, May, July, August, October, and December, and it does fluctuate with the economy. Last year we actually, which is kind of strange, but we actually had an increase in our corporate personal property replacement tax, which, you know, may have been from the loss the year before, but it was a considerable increase. This year we really just don't know what it's going to be. Then there's state and federal revenue. State revenue comes from the state general funds and includes general state aid, which is one of our largest amounts, categorical grants, and competitive grants. At this time, the state of Illinois only distributes general state aid, which is about $3.1 million for us in a timely manner twice a month. Categorical grants include special education grants, transportation if it comes to us, and bilingual grants. Even those, we're not sure that we always get. Categorical grants are normally paid quarterly. This year we've only received one so far. We expect to receive a second in special ed categorical grant this year, but there is adopted legislation sitting on the governor's desk to extend the payment deadline, which is normally August 30th, until December 31st, 2011. Yeah.
That's for the whole fiscal year?
Yeah.
Not the calendar year?
No. And then federal revenue. Federal revenue includes revenue from No Child Left Behind title programs, including Title I Low Income, Title II Teacher Improvement, Title III LipLep, which is bilingual. Language, I always just know it, LipLep. LipLeps, yeah. Yeah, Language Improvement Program, Language Enrichment Program. I don't know what the S is. We don't know what the S is. The largest amount of money that we get is from federal revenue, is from Individuals with Disability Act, which is the IDEA grant. That is a large sum of money for special education. Okay, we segregate both revenues and expenditures by fund. The definition of a fund is an independent accounting entity with a self-balancing set of accounts, including its own assets, liabilities, and fund balance. Within each fund, debits will equal credits. They're self-balancing. And in our district, we have funds. They segregate the revenue by the area in which it's designated. It's important that you know that, because people tend to think that if you have money in one fund, it's transferable, or you can just go ahead and expend from that fund for things that are not designated. So, for instance, I can't pay a teacher out of an operations and maintenance fund. Okay? I can't do that. I can't pay Social Security out of the education fund. So these are the funds that we have. Education, which is a capped levy, which means that it falls under the tax caps. Okay? Operations and maintenance is also capped. Debt service is non-capped, because it's referendum debt for the most part. Transportation is a capped levy. IMRF is also a capped levy, even though IMRF can, and that's also Social Security, can go tell employers, this is how much you're going to be paying this year. So when the crash, if you want to call it that, came forward, our rate went up from 7 to like 11%. We still have a cap levy, but we had to, find a method to pay that. So it's kind of an interesting process. Capital projects, there's no levy for at all. It's either you receive that through bond sale, or the proceeds of the bond sales are transferred into the capital projects fund, or in some cases you can transfer money from operations and maintenance and designate that for a capital project. Working cash is a capped levy, and fire, life, and safety is a capped levy. However, we don't levy at this point. The other way that you can deal with fire, life, and safety is by issuing bonds. However, you have to have pass a referendum to do that. And if you're going to do that, why wouldn't you just do general obligation bonds rather than having specific bonds for fire, life, and safety? Sure.
Question following up on this. And capital projects, there's no levy. So my understanding in talking to folks in municipal finance is it's not really set up to save for investment in fixed assets. That the only way you really fund this is through a referendum and a bond issue typically. And the way it was explained to me, it's you come up with a 5 to 7 year capital plan. You issue a set of bonds to fund those 5 to 7 years, and every kind of 5 to 7 years you need to refresh your capital plan, and may require additional tax revenue because it really doesn't set up so that you can actually save money to go do that. Is that kind of a correct characterization of how you manage a capital budget?
It's exactly correct.
Okay.
And that really is the source of the way that PTEL came about, and before the Property Tax Extension Act came forward, really people were able to levy as they needed. Unfortunately, some governmental bodies and some districts as well levied as they wanted, not as they needed. That then became an issue because taxes got really, really high. And so there was the need for this property tax relief, and then that became this property tax extension limitation law. Within that, it then also said that the only way that you can issue bonds is through referendum, or for the remainder of the non-referendum debt that you had in 1994 that you pay off. And it actually, not only just for capital projects, but sometimes even for education fund or operating funds, it functions the same way. The only way that you can get money to do major projects or to make major changes in your programs is to go to referendum and ask your constituency if they agree that this is something that they would like to do. And I can remember when the tax caps came in, Senator Pate Phillips, who was the author of this, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea in one sense, because it certainly did help with taxes. But he said to me, "What do you think of that bill?" And I said, "I don't think much of it." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Because it kind of penalizes districts who have a poor community, or a community that's not willing to fund, education." And he said, "Then they'll have lousy education. That's their problem." So that was kind of the answer to it. And there's some logic to that, I guess, but it's really not helping kids. And that's the way I look at it. Nevertheless, it is the way that we deal with it. And in times like this, where it's very difficult times, it's hard to pass referendums. I think there were only a handful of referendums were passed in the last election. And it's because it's a poor economic time. That doesn't preclude the fact that they needed, in many instances, to improve their facilities. Lockport high schools are one of the biggest ones that they haven't been able to pass a referendum, and I think it's been in 5 years they've been trying. At this point, they're on quadruple shifts and, trying to find any way that they can do it. Some kids start at 6 and 5 o'clock in the morning to go to school because they can't pass a referendum to get a new high school. So it works for you, it works against you. It works for you in that it requires you to be transparent. It requires you to explain yourself. You can't just take money and be, fast and loose with it, which is great. That's the way it should be. But on the other hand, it does necessitate, if you're going to make improvements, that about every 5 to 7 years, you're going to be going out to referendum, just as what you were told.
And so when we have budget discussions, the budget discussions like we just had with EPRD are operating budget discussions, which is, when we talk about closing a $3 million gap, that's an operating budget discussion. When we talk about improving our physical plant, it's a whole different set of accounts, a whole different funding mechanism, and the two don't go together. So we look at if we had extra here, you really can't just move it to go do that. So we have to engage the community in a discussion around operating budget. But as we get to capital planning, I think everybody needs to understand, too, that that's a whole separate discussion. We need to have a different pocket of money and a different funding solution that we've got to come up with.
Absolutely, and it's a discussion that we had a while ago, right before all of you came onto the board, about Lincoln. And the question was, what are we going to do about Lincoln? And when Mr. Pruneau comes on, I think that's going to be a discussion that you're going to need to have, because we feel like there's a point where you're throwing good money after bad. And there's a point where you can't fix, what ails Lincoln. And so the only way that you would be able to either renovate Lincoln or get a new school is through a referendum.
So, that just means just one other fine point, and I think it was mentioned, I think Jim may have mentioned it last night, was that the operating budget, we talk about how to divide up and spend. Ultimately, we vote on that. But ultimately, the capital budget is a recommendation by the board, but the ultimate authority for the capital budget lies with the taxpayers that are going to vote on that referendum. So we don't make capital decisions, really, as far as we go. We make recommendations, but ultimately it's going to be approved or not by the general public.
That's correct. Once the general public then approves it, that's when your decision-making process begins, because you're tasked, and the entire district, the administration, everyone else, with spending that money in a way that the taxpayers were told it's going to be spent. So several years back, we had capital projects that we approved with referendum, and one of the places, for instance, that was not included in the capital projects, the second referendum, was Madison. Madison wasn't included. We could not use referendum funds to renovate Madison. We had to use our own operation funds to renovate Madison, because Madison was not included in the referendum question. So yeah, it's that specific, and so it is something that is basically decided by the community. You're right. Okay. So here's our projected revenue, and I think actually it'll be slightly higher than this, but again, I'm qualifying things. But right now what we're expecting is that we're going to see a 3.25% increase in the education fund, which is a little over $2.6 million. In operations and maintenance, almost a 2% increase of $181,034. Debt service, just because of the way that our debt is structured and because of the loss of EAV to a certain extent, we're going to see an increase of $557,738. Again, that's dictated by our payment schedule, not by any levy that we do or anything else in terms of that. Transportation, in order to keep afloat, we're looking at an 8.33% increase, or $230,765. 3.31 for IMRF Social Security. It kind of translates to our changes in terms of salaries and benefits, and at the same time also keeps us, on a positive balance level. And there, capital projects, we're obviously not expecting, our balances have gone down, and we're not expecting a lot of revenue that's comprised solely of interest income. Working cash, an increase of $1,105, and nothing for fire, life, and safety as far as an increase is concerned. So what we're looking at is a total of $107,262, I'm sorry, I do this every time, $107,262,025, which is an increase of 3.46% in revenue. It's a total of $3.7 million plus. Pardon me? No, 11, 12.
I think you said the.
I'm sorry, yes, the 110. Already on retirement mode, evidently. Okay. No. Okay, here's the breakout by funds. And obviously, our largest fund is education fund. Most revenue will go to that at 76.212%, 8.672 to operations and maintenance, almost 10% to bond and interest, and then the remainder of the funds are kind of distributed at 2.7 for transportation and 2.7 almost for our IMRF Social Security, and then the smaller funds, working cash, capital projects, and fire, life, safety are a minimal amount that amounts to a little less than 3%. Why doesn't it go? Okay. Our breakout by source, our largest amount obviously is from local at 89.79%, only 5.97% from the state. Federal is down because we're not receiving ARRA funds this year, so that's a little less than 2.4%, and 1.86 is basically from transfers. And some other federal sources that are considered to be other sources rather than federal sources, and specifically what I'm talking about is E-rate. Our local ed fund revenue breakdown, just to give you a little example of everything, and our total local increase is $3.4 million. Obviously, the largest amount is in taxes of $4 million. I want you to note our lunch sales dropped significantly this year. And I think it'll catch up a little with the final deposits that come in, but it does say something about the economy, doesn't it? That people are carrying their lunch more, sending lunch with the kids, not buying so much. The same applies a little bit to tuition. Most of the tuition applies to summer school. There's a bit of a drop there in tuition in terms of that. And then, of course, our increase in fees that we incorporated this year. Textbook fees are slightly down just based on enrollment and the amount that we'll be charging next year. Just to give you a percentage idea, 93.3% of our local ed fund revenue is from taxes. And on our state revenue, general state aid, $2 million is what we're looking at. Special ed, an increase of $131,068 to a little over 2.5. Categoricals, just about a $2,400 decrease. And other special grants, about $5,890 increase. A total increase from the state of $70,951. Yes.
Pat, where are we on state payments? So if we're looking at our current year budget, we were expecting $4.7 million from the state.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me where we are in terms of actual receipts or projected? I mean, we assume we'll get general state aid.
We're pretty close, probably maybe about $1 million short, but that's because we were sent in August the money that was from the last year's fiscal year away. So we're running like 2 years behind in the amount of money. So we're pretty close to what we projected. And if we do get some of our payments at June 30th, as they've perhaps been talking about, we'll probably be right about there.
So I want to make sure I understand. We expected revenue from the state for this current school year that we are just wrapping up June 30th of 4.7. And or you're saying these numbers are really shifted?
Yeah.
These are prior year.
They're when we budgeted last year, we assumed that we would only be receiving 2 payments and that we would also receive 1 from the prior year. And that's pretty much, we actually received 2 from the prior year and 1 from this year. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
So the 4.8, we expect the state is going to make us whole on this 4.7 number, so the 4.8 would actually be the state, we're presuming, these are revenues that would come to us from the state during the school year, tied to the current school year that we're going to start July 1.
No,
we're still making up payments.
No. As you know, with the business managers, if we don't all stick together, we fall apart. And so, in general, what has been recommended to us from the State Board of Education and the various business managers is you budget for the 3 payments that we haven't received this year and budget that as next year's revenue. And if you get more than that, you'll be lucky. So that's kind of the way that I'm dealing with it, is I'm budgeting for the 3 payments that we didn't get this year. Although the governor has talked about just saying goodbye to the 1 payment in there, but it should probably work out to be pretty. It's all semantics. I mean, it's money that is supposed to be from last year or the year before or whatever. It's.
Let me ask you, there's a balance sheet question that goes with the income statement here. So the receivable from the state at the beginning of the period was what, and at the end of the period it's assumed to be what?
Well, if you're following that way, we only do our receivables through August. So our receivables through August was about $3 million, and then we projected another approximately $2 million to be coming in terms of the categorical and the state payments, and we're pretty close to that because there was a number of school districts banded together and kind of sent a letter off to the state and said, we're going to sue you for our money. And suddenly the money appeared. But this year, the governor may be literally saying, first of all, they passed the bill that said, no, you don't have to do it by August anymore, and it'll be December. They also said, we can't sue you. And then they also said, because we're an entity of the state, so we can't sue them for the money that they promised us. And then said, and we may just decide that we're not going to send you the money.
So, but at the end of the 2011 fiscal, right, which is what, June 30? The state owes us how much?
About $4 million.
About $4 million. And then, so at the end of 2012, in our budget, we think the state's still going to owe us 4, or is only going to owe us 2?
No, I think they're still going to owe us 4.
They're still going to owe us 4. So
or more.
It really is just a straight shift then. We're not actually catching up. So that's a conservative, unless they they budget the way we can't budget in the private sector, which is we're not paying that anymore.
They're getting to that.
Yeah.
They're getting to that. So, yeah, we just figure we'll get last year's this year, and then next year we don't know what's going to happen, yeah. And what's really interesting, it's all based on the year before's figures. So, I mean, it's not like they give us this money up front. They don't. We have to expend it, and then they pay it back to us. So.
My point in bringing all this up is that we need to continue the conversation and have an understanding at the board table that a certain percentage of our revenues comes directly from the state to cover general state aid and categoricals. And unfortunately, we have a track record right now in terms of our receivables from the state of being inconsistent. At times, they will fall $1 million, $2 million, $3 million behind. We don't know if they'll ever catch up. But in terms of our overall budgeting and how tight we can get in terms of our revenues versus expenditures, and there's a certain time in the spring where we get very, very close to our low balances. This is where the discussion comes in terms of our fund balances. So I toss it up for the new board members that haven't been sitting through these discussions, and it's always a surprise in terms of how far behind are we, Pat? Yeah. Are they going to catch up? And it's a different story every time we hear the update about the state. So just...
We're assuming that they're always going to be a year behind as a conservative assumption for what we're doing. So there's always going to be kind of a year of AR sitting there for us, and if we can, if they actually make good, we'll be better. But our projections and our low fund balance is based on them being a year, always owing us a year's worth of.
I would say in the last 2 years that's been the case. Before that, it was maybe, half of the amount, and before that, just one payment, and then for many years they were pretty much right on. They might get it a little bit late, but for the most part, they might have cut it all the way to June 30th, but we did get it. But now it's we just never know what we're going to be getting in terms of the state. Federal revenue, on the other hand, great segue. We can pretty much count on federal revenue. We know what we're going to get. We hear what we're going to get at some time during the summer, and they're pretty much right on it, whether we like it or not. They do, follow through, and they do send the money. One thing that's going to be a little bit different this year is federal. Normally, it does a distribution based on some projections, and you do have to provide to give them a detail of what you've spent, but it kind of crosses over. In terms of, particularly in the special ed arena and the flow-through monies, you get your flow-through money, and at the same time you're putting in your claim, and it's coming really quickly. The federal government has issued guidelines that said we're not issuing any money until we have absolute claims with, everything. So that's going to put our federal revenue back a little bit. Nevertheless, it isn't that much in the first place, so it is what it is. And notice, too, that on our National School Lunch Program, it's gone up by $62,000, which, again, correlates to that, economic issue on there. Our Title and Medicaid money is also gone up slightly, again, because of our poverty level, which is increasing slightly. Special ed is kind of holding the same, maybe dropping a little bit. Ms. Schnorr told me that it may be dropping after I finish this. We heard that it might be dropping another $200,000. And the big hit for us this year is there is no ARRA funds, no Obama funds, so we lost almost $900,000 in that. So we're literally at a negative $776,182 in federal revenue for this coming year. Federal funds break out as as in the state. The majority of our funds come from special education, Title and Medicaid next, and the National School Lunch Program. Just to give you my assumptions so far, preliminarily, projections are based on receipts through June 6th. We do think we're going to get additional fees and investment maturity income because we structure it to come in generally around June 30th, an annual investment. And then we've also been hearing that we'll probably be getting state funds that may be issued on June 30th, although when they say it may be issued on June 30th, often it comes in on July 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. So State funding is based on a payment of the 3 remaining categorical payments not yet received and not expected to be received this year. And federal funding is as reported appropriation amounts as of June 6, 2011. And I'm happy to take any other questions. Mr. Welton will be providing you with the expenditure projections and any updated revenue projections, as well as the end-of-year fund balances in July. And I'll be working with him a little bit on that, and then I'm sure he's going to put his own slant to things, as all good business managers do.
Any other questions for Ms. Masterton? Mr. McDonough?
This fund accounting system that you use is prescribed by the school code, is that right? Okay. But you did mention that we segregate things into certain funds. And I do see on some of the fund balances that there are transfers. But I thought you said that you're not allowed to transfer.
It's a generalization. There are transfers that are required by the state code. The funds are segregated that way through what they call the Illinois Program Accounting Manual that we have to follow. 2 years ago, they made some changes to the Illinois Program Accounting Manual and said that certain short-term debt needed to be paid out of the debt service fund. In order to do that, you had to transfer money where the debt was supposed to be paid out, in this case, technology, and transfer it out of the education fund into the debt service fund and then pay it out of the debt service fund. It's just something that they wanted to do down in Springfield. The same applies to our payments for this building that come out of operations and maintenance fund. We transfer operations and maintenance fund into the debt service fund, and then it's paid out of the debt service fund.
I'm going to hold off with the rest of my questions until after Saturday's session, when we get Mr. Langdon again for municipal finance or school finance.
Let's move on to approval of board meeting minutes from May 24th, 2011. Is there anyone who has additions or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, they will be approved as presented. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's consent agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to remove anything from that consent agenda before we vote on it? Mrs. Hirsch.
Item J.
Item J. Anything else? Mr. McDonough?
I and H.
H, I, and J are to be removed. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of the personnel report, financial reports, Freedom of Information Act requests, approval of a donation to Lincoln School, approval to open designated closed session minutes and keep all other closed session minutes closed, approval to authorize destruction of verbatim recordings of closed session minutes, and approval of bank depositories. Moved by Ms. Hirsch. Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Stufen. Mrs. Walsh, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Ms. Stufen?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner? Yes. Mr. Collins is absent. Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Droney?
Yes. 6 ayes, 1 absent, no nays. That motion carries. Next item, let's take H first. The approval of a contract renewal for special education transportation. Is there a motion? Ms. Hirsch.
I move that the Board of Education approve a 1-year extension of the contract with Cottage Hill Transportation with a 2.5% increase in rates for the 2011-12 school year.
Is there a second? Mr. Bloom. It's been moved by Ms. Hirsch, seconded by Mr. Bloom, to approve a 1-year extension of the contract with Cottage Hill for special education transportation. Woo. Is there any discussion?
My question is simply, this is an extension of an additional year for 2.5%. Was this originally competitively bid, or is this a portion of a larger contract?
No, transportation is competitively bid. So this was an original contract that was competitively bid, and it's just an extension of that contract.
And the reason for doing a single-year extension as opposed to rebidding the whole thing?
A couple of reasons. The changeover to of a vendor for special education transportation can be extremely difficult. The students and the parents are particularly comfortable with the people that they know. The 2.5% was a very reasonable amount in consideration of the fuel increases, because they do not have a fuel surcharge. Cottage Hill does not. Furthermore, a new business manager coming in, multiple new administrators coming in, it just felt like this was a reasonable change, and maybe there was enough change going on in the district at this point that maybe we didn't need another thing to change and another thing to possibly have, not novices, I don't want to use the word novices, but novices to Elmhurst trying to deal with in such short notice. So that was why we did that.
And it's a one-year contract each time with this. That's fine.
Any other discussion? Any other questions? Mrs. Walsh, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mr. Collins is absent. Mrs. Droney?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. That motion carries. The next item, the approval of the contract with Coca-Cola. The administration, I believe, has asked to withdraw that from our agenda this evening. Would you like to make a comment, Ms. Masterton?
We have relooked at the contract itself and feel that in view of some possible initiatives that we might want to make in the future, that the board may, feel that they want to make in the future, as well as some exclusivity areas in the contract that we're not real comfortable with, that we think it would behoove us to go out and rebid our beverage contract without some of the provisions that are in this contract. And so we would ask that the board table this until a further date that we would bring that back. I have to give Mr. Welton something extra to do after all. The item J, approval of new policy. Is there a motion, Ms. Hirsch?
I move that the Board of Education adopt as a first reading the new policy 4:15, identity protection, which when adopted will become effective at the time of its adoption and subsequently added to the policy manual of the Board of Education, Section 4, Operational Services.
Is there a second? Ms. Ebner, moved by Mrs. Hirsch, seconded by Ms. Ebner, the identity protection policy, first reading. Is there any discussion? Ms. Hirsch.
I just wanted to introduce this policy. This is a new policy recommended by the IASB, Illinois Association of School Boards, based on new legislation. It's basically putting a new policy in place which is designed to protect all of our employees, anyone who we secure and handle Social Security numbers, information that can be used in cases of identity theft. And so this is a policy that the board will put in place, directing the administration to ensure that we have processes in place to protect our employees against identity theft. So just wanted to explain what this new policy was. The process for new policy adoption, and this is a first reading. The policy's been posted online. People can take a look at it. It will be brought back for second reading, and then adoption. Typically, we do a second reading and adoption at that second meeting. So this policy would go into effect at the July meeting. I don't know the date.
Any other discussion? Motion on the floor is to approve the first reading of the identity protection policy. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. That motion carries. That brings us to upcoming meetings. Our next meeting will be July 19th here at the District 205 Center. It will be the first meeting with Mr. Dave Pruneau, our new superintendent, Dr. Charles Johns, our assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, who happens to be here with us this evening in the audience, Mr. Chris Weldon, our assistant superintendent for finance, and Mr. Brad Hillman, our assistant superintendent for HR. So we will have a lot of new faces. We look forward to all of you joining us. While we are sad to see you go, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be the business meeting on August 16th. We have a couple of items coming out of closed session that we need to act on. Anyone?
We have the June 21st and 27th meetings.
We do have those as well. Those are special meetings. June 21st will be a board learning meeting, and June 27th as well, a board learning meeting. Those will take place here also at the district. We are also sending 4 board members to the IASB boot camp, 3 days of intensive training at the end of this week. They will know all of the answers when they come back, so look out, old board members. Closed session items, Ms. Hirsch.
With pleasure, I move that the Board of Education approve the appointment of Mr. R. Charles Sprandel as the Director of Research, Assessment, and Quality Analysis, effective July 1, 2011.
Is there a second, please? Seconded by Mrs. Stufen, moved by Mrs. Hirsch to approve the appointment of Charles Sprandel as our Director of Research, Assessment, and Quality Analysis. Is there any discussion? We're happy to have you. We are looking forward to great things coming out of this new position, which we carved out of our budget with a carving knife to try and find the funds to do this, and we are really looking forward to the quality that you'll be able to bring our district. I think it's going to be a great addition to and really move us forward in lots of ways, student achievement mostly. Ms. Hirsch.
I just wanted to also point out that Charles has been with us in the district for a number of years, serving in our curriculum department as our lead curriculum person in math and science. And so this is our second example of being able to promote from within, taking someone who has experience working in 205, understands the culture, understands some of the unique challenges that our school district have, not that every school district doesn't have their own unique challenges, but I'm thrilled to see us, again, promote from within. And I think given the fact that we will have many new faces here, you'll be one of the ones that our new faces look to for some guidance. But I'm, again, thrilled to have you step up in a new role, and congratulations.
Any other discussion? Motion on the floor is to approve the appointment of Mr. Charles Sprandel as Director of Research, Assessment, and Quality Analysis. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Welcome. Again, congratulations. We have 2 other items. Anyone care to make a motion? Mrs. Ebner.
I move that the Board of Education approve the appointment of Mr. Christopher Covino as the Assistant Principal of Curriculum and Instruction at York High School, effective July 1, 2011.
Is there a second? Second. Moved by Mrs. Ebner, seconded by Mr. McDonough to approve the appointment of Christopher Covino as Assistant Principal of Curriculum and Instruction at York. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. That motion carries. Welcome to Mr. Covino as well. I don't believe he's here. The last item coming out of closed session. Is there a motion? Mr. McDonough.
I'll do it right this time. I move that the Board of Education approve the exempt support staff salaries as recommended by the administration.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Ebner. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Walsh, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mr. Collins is absent. Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Hirsch?
Yes.
Mrs. Durrani?
Yes. 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. That motion carries. That concludes our agenda except for board communications. Is there anyone who has anything to share with the board? Ms. Hirsch.
I just wanted to share with my fellow board members in the audience, there's a new group of parents that have formed a group that is in response to our budget constraints that we have experienced and the fees that we have judiciously and tried to carefully impose in terms of the high school athletic fees, the transportation fees, and what some of those things are doing and how they're going to impact students and families. And so there's a group of parents that have banded together. They are looking to try to alleviate some of those pressures. There will be a meeting tomorrow night at York High School, which I plan on attending to hear about their research, what they've been looking into, and what they are trying to do to alleviate on the parental support side some of the families that are really struggling with the fees that we've been, and unfortunately, in a position that we've had to impose. And so I look forward to attending that meeting and bringing a report back to the board so we have a better understanding of what other supports are out there for our families.
Maria, is that at York at 7 in the Commons? Is that?
I believe the meeting is at 7 p.m. In the Yorker room. It is not our meeting. It is this group of parents that have chosen to initiate this discussion. And so it's parent-led. It's not a current organization, but they are working with the organizations that currently support our district, the Boosters for Music, the Boosters for York, the District 205 Foundation. So they're trying to come up with an overall strategy to help those families. So we comply with the Open Meetings Act. Again, it's not our meeting. I'm going as, 1, a York parent, and 2, as a board member to sit and listen and report back. But to be in compliance with the Open Meetings Act in general, it's best to limit. I mean, we can have more than 2 board members present, but we cannot speak to and discuss the business of the district when we're in the room. So I had been in contact with these parents and had been working actually with some parents on the activities fees, so I'm choosing to go. Anybody is welcome to attend, but if we do attend so that we are compliant, we just sit and listen.
Yeah, can we decide this here, because it's easier than calling everybody individually and figuring this out? I think it's hard to explain to a group of passionate people that we can't talk, and so, I guess I would rather have 2 of us go and actually be able to engage in a community discussion, or I think we should talk about posting these kinds of meetings in the future and finding out a way to do it even though it's not our meeting so that we can talk. Because our job is to engage with the community, and if our hands are tied, we need to do whatever administrative things we need to do to be able to talk. And so, I would be fine with 2 of us going and having an engaging conversation rather than 3 of us going and then standing there and telling parents that want an answer, no, sorry, I can't say anything. And I hope they would understand that. So I'm willing to step back. I mean, I've got some things work-wise that I could do. I mean, you're going, is there? Would you go?
I am able to go.
So the 2 of you guys?
Sure.
Perfect.
In general, when this kind of things come up, most people that are extremely engaged and we talk to and we're working and having individual discussions, they understand the limitations that we're under with the Open Meetings Act. So it's relatively new for the 4 of you. It's something that you've become accustomed to in holding discussions and those kind of things. But I'm open to saying, I don't know that I'm comfortable to the point that we want to go to posting meetings that are not our meetings. But I am comfortable in saying we can coordinate better and have a rotating 2 board members.
Let's not say we won't post meetings, all right? But let's talk to council about what it means. Because if all that means is that we're giving notice that more than 2 board members are going to be at a meeting, then I'm all for doing that. You know, it's not, does posting a meeting really mean that it's our meeting, or does it just mean that we are posting that we are going to have a quorum, a majority of a quorum in one place at a time? So that it then gives us the freedom to engage in a discussion.
That's a great question for you to ask this weekend.
I think, right, I think, exactly. Further discussion, but let's not
Free
assume
legal
that we've got the
counsel.
answer.
Yes, absolutely. And they will give you an answer, I'm sure.
On the tape that they're going to put across.
It has been our practice. That's how, since I've been on the board, that's how we've conducted ourselves. So if we want to make a shift, well, let's get some legal advice and talk about it.
Any other board communications?
I do not know. I would contact the high school principal.
I have one other item of board communications, and that is Ms. Masterton and Mr. Shue and myself met with representative number of York neighbors today. These are neighbors who in the past have been concerned with noise pollution in the area that is thrown off by York High School. And we actually have an agreement with them. I hope if I'm saying something that isn't true, please step in. We met with them today at 5 o'clock. They had some concerns about an event that was taking place. There are strict guidelines for when we can run the chillers and when we cannot. And they felt and when there are exceptions to that, we need to let them know, ask for an exception. And while they granted us the exception, they just wanted some clarification about why and how many more we expected and what the procedures would be. And Ms. Masterton and Mr. Shue handled the meeting beautifully, and I think we have everything ironed out. We have a couple of different tweaks to our ongoing procedures, and it was a good, productive meeting. I just wanted to report that. That concludes our agenda.
Motion for adjournment?
It's been moved by Ms. Hirsch to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Thank you very much.